Here's what actually happened.
The foundation of all knowledge.
I'm really mad that
what difference does it make, right? What
Stop.
the deregulation of the industry is obviously going to cause more of that industry.
And to lubricate the trust connection between people until they have enough.
Yet we could still look at biological reality in determining who's a female, even if there are.
Why don't you denounce feminism the same way you're denouncing capitalism? If you don't...
For something to be objective, it needs to be verifiable. And you can't verify...
If I make a claim as a political pundit, it is true that I definitely could be wrong. That you're promoting, right?
Ideologies that make sense in politics, right? This is my ideology.
So 2015, anyone go back and watch the footage. The first GOP debate.
Cool, Robert. Oh, dead? With a crowbar, you said.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sara, the Raging Tomato, bringing to you live another debate. This evening's question in line is a Trump, or not even a question, a statement, pardon me. A Trump deportations do more harm than good. RTP Talks and Stephen Kent from, from Geeky Stoics. Sorry, I had it in my head and then it went gone by. Are here to debate the topic. RTP, would you like to begin with your opening statement, please?
It would be my pleasure. Sara, thanks for having us. Stephen, thanks for being here. Stephen is the only person ever that I have debated that ended with a hug. And I will say Stephen said some very risque things into my ear at the end of that, and I won't repeat them. But Stephen, it's good to see you again.
Thank you for keeping that private. I appreciate that.
I'm just devastated that we won't be able to hug after this. It's tough. Trump deportations do more harm than good. Let's start with the economic harm. Undocumented immigrants are a vital part of the United States workforce, especially in industries like agriculture, construction, food service, elder care. They fill jobs that are hard to staff. They pay billions in taxes, and they help keep prices down for American consumers. In 2023, undocumented immigrants paid nearly $90 billion in federal, state, and local taxes and held nearly $300 billion in spending power. Removing them would shrink the labor force, reduce productivity, and hurt businesses that rely on their labor. The impact on the GDP would be significant. Multiple studies show that mass deportation would reduce United States GDP by up to 3%. That would cost the economy hundreds of billions of dollars and lead to higher prices for everybody. Deporting millions would not free up jobs for citizens. Instead, it would cause massive labor shortages, force businesses to close or relocate, and result in job losses for native-born workers as the economy inevitably contracts. 42% of U.S. farm workers are undocumented immigrants. I don't have to lay that out too clearly to understand that U.S. farm workers losing 42% of their workers would be devastating. Without this labor force, crops like lettuce, tomatoes, corn will go unharvested, fields will be left barren, and livestock may not properly be cared for. Millions of tons of produce that could be left unharvested due to lack of workers would just be a waste. Perishable crops are especially at risk, leading to significant food waste and, more importantly, loss of income for farmers. If we're successful at carrying out the 3,000 deportations per day now mandated by DHS, food prices are projected to rise by 10%, potentially more as supply drops and production costs increase. Shortages of domestic produce may force increased reliance on imports, furthering raising prices and reducing food security. The only real solution to this seems to be more that you would have more factory farms with a need for capital, which will likely be facilitated through government subsidies and capital, which would put family farms in the hands of corporations. In a MAGA Maha movement, this creates a stark deviation from the claimed goal of helping American farmers and also getting off overprocessed food and roided out beef. These shortages would lead to a devastated rural economy across the country, leaving us with either a need for welfare or a mass migration to bigger cities. Agricultural production could decrease by 30 to 60 billion. That's according to THS, a program that connects consumers with farm workers. Many small and mid-sized farms would be forced out of business due to labor shortages and rising costs. Local economies that depend on agriculture will suffer from lost jobs and reduced spending in local economies. The fiscal harm is significant, and it leads to higher costs, not savings. The average cost to deport one undocumented immigrant is between $10,000 and $24,000, depending on where you're looking at the number. Mass deportation of 13 million people would cost at least $315 billion, but could cost as much as $800 billion. When we deport those people, we will lose the contributions that undocumented immigrants make to Social Security and Medicare, which is about $34 billion to Social Security and about $6.5 billion towards Medicare. That's money that we'll never collect, and that's money that helps maintain those programs as they stand now. In 2023, undocumented immigrants paid between 90 and 97 billion in federal, state, and local taxes. That includes payroll taxes, Social Security, Medicare, sales tax, property tax, either directly or through rent. And of course, states with large unpopulated populations like California, Texas, and New York collect billions in additional tax revenue from these residents. It is my contention that the net fiscal impact is generally positive at the federal level, sometimes negative at the state and local level, but that's mainly due to the education costs for U.S.-born children. Granting legal status and work authorization would increase tax contributions by between $40 and $140 billion annually, which further improves our fiscal balance, and I know Stephen loves fiscal balance. On top of the fiscal implications, the harm to the community we've already seen has been devastating. Family separation, social disruption can't really be measured in terms of data, but adding division into cities, counties, states, and the country where there's no evidence of any fiscal benefit is frankly baffling to me. It would make some more glass half empty liberals lead them to believe that for some, maybe it truly is about cruelty or racism. Family separation, millions of United States children have undocumented parents. Deportations potentially could separate families, traumatize children, increase foster care and social service costs. When immigrants fear deportation, they're far less likely to report crime or cooperate with police. That makes communities less safe for everybody. In some communities, this lack of trust moves communities to look to gang admission for protection and economic mobility. There's also the social and health impacts where children in mixed status families suffer academically and emotionally when a parent's deported. Health outcomes worsen and trust in public institutions erode. The moral and humanitarian harm that would be cast on our country. I believe America's strength comes from its values: opportunity, family, and fairness. Mass deportation plans often rely on expedited removal. That can oftentimes sweep up legal immigrants and even U.S. citizens, denying them fair hearings and due process. By targeting legal immigrants, recent Republican proposals have called for ending protections for legal immigrants, including DACA, TPS recipients, green card holders, and now even naturalized citizens. Our international reputation has been destroyed. Harsh deportation policies damage our standing around the world. They undermine our role as a beacon of hope and freedom and a country with values. I believe there's no net benefit to mass deportations, and I think the evidence is overwhelming. I think that it's really difficult to make an argument for mass deportation without relying on stories like Lake and Riley, without names, and without tugging at heartstrings. If we look at this just economically, it makes perfect sense to give these folks amnesty. I think a comprehensive immigration reform that provides a path to legal status, secures the border, and meets labor markets would be a far better way to go about this. And I think Trump's mass deportation agenda would inflict enormous economic, fiscal, humanity, and frankly, American harm. while failing to deliver the promised benefits that they tell us every single day. It would make America poorer, less safe, and less true to its values. The evidence is overwhelming. Mass deportations do far more harm than good.
Thank you, RTP. And Stephen, to you.
Okay, over to me then. All right, Trump deportations do more harm than good. The first question here that must be answered about the motion regarding harm or good is who or what is potentially being harmed by deportations. If this motion were about individuals and illegal immigrants who entered the United States without permission or process, there is no doubt in my mind that deportations do them more harm than good. People come here from all around the world because America has something special that they want a piece of. The American dream may be a punchline to many people in our audience and to natural-born citizens under the age of 40 who can't afford a mortgage or get out from their college debts. But it is not a joke to the millions of people who risk life and limb every year to come here or patiently wait for the process to play out, for the promise of prosperity greater than that of their parents, keeping more of what they earn, or relative safety in their communities, plus rule of law compared to places like Honduras, Haiti, or Mexico, where they might have come from. As such, we have problems that the rest of the world does not have when it comes to immigration, namely scale. Because our legal immigration system is a catastrophe, which we would agree on, totally broken by a cowardly Congress, the U.S. gets flooded from all sides and both coasts by people who want to be here. Every developed nation in the world has this problem, but not at the scale that we do. Every developed nation, Japan, Australia, France, as just a couple examples, detains, houses, and deports individuals in their country illegally who lack a visa, a work status, or a refugee status that has been deemed appropriate. It is only in the United States where our mythology around 19th and 20th century immigration through Ellis Island has outstripped its usefulness to modern day. We have chosen to embrace lawlessness and non-enforcement, the very things that many people come here to this country to escape. Yes, individual people are harmed by deportation, but I don't believe that we are debating that motion tonight. I believe we are debating and can only debate whether or not deportations do more harm than good for the United States, a sovereign nation state and collective of people. The definition of nation state is important here to me. It is not a concept. It is a country with well-defined borders and a shared sense of culture and history. Racially homogeneous countries like Finland and Iceland and Japan, they function like a woven blanket. They are unified, and the sameness of every inch of the blanket is a feature of being in that country. It's what you expect. The United States is not like that. It's a quilt of a dozen patches all stitched together. We have Chinese communities, Venezuelan communities, and Cuban and Latvian within the collective, but it is only made possible by the fact that they do legally belong here and are perceived by other people on the quilt to be contributing to the business of the country and not just the business of their own self-interest. See, this is where immigration anarchists to the left embrace the radical individualism and selfishness that is usually found on the libertarian right, where no one person or family has duties to the people around them or an obligation to the collective. That's why the ladies on The View, they're clowns, on ABC were so appalled by Arnold Schwarzenegger, an Austrian immigrant who argued that immigrants of all stripes of the United States owe the country something in return for their being here, that it's a privilege, not a right, that they should be volunteering, doing community service, learning English and speaking it at home. There is more to this than just payroll taxes and their labor for our cheap farm goods. In 2024, Gallup showed that 55% of Americans want immigration levels reduced, which is the highest level since 2001. For context, that was 28% in 2020. So that's a lot of numbers. It doubled in 4 years. And we think we all know why during the Biden years. Also, cause for concern to me, fewer than half of Americans, 44%, now say that they trust all or most of the people in their neighborhood, down from 52% a decade ago. And it is worse for from 20 years ago. The reasons for this are many, and one of them is uncontrolled, unaccountable, and undemocratic immigration that goes beyond what Americans are comfortable with or what they ever voted for. This decline in support for immigration and the return of nativist politics is bad for the United States. I believe JRTP and I agree on this. We have a century ahead of us that is going to be defined by struggle and great power conflict with much more populous and organized opponents, China. And to win this, to maintain our dominance in the world, we actually need more people. I am a proponent, a weird right-wing proponent of the 1 billion Americans strategy that was put out by Matt Iglesias that says we need to triple the size of our population over time to meet these challenges. But we can't force Americans to have more babies, and immigration is actually really important. And as such, so is support for immigration, which we've destroyed. If we lose the majority's support for national growth and expansion, we will lose on these global challenges. And just to bring us over the finish line, so to return to my original point here, deportations do more good than harm for the country because they reflect the will of the people who have voted for it and a lawful process and the enforcement of immigration law. Getting this right is very important. And in a perfect world, Congress would pass a generous pathway to citizenship that brings everybody out of the shadows, but they haven't done it. And in the meantime, we have to do the correct thing, which is enforce the law of the land. And it might be the case that aggressive deportations actually boost public support for an immigration bill because there are many people out there who don't like what they're seeing on TV with ICE operations. Americans, go figure, they do tend to want one thing, but they never want the consequences or the bad feelings of the things that come along with that. Joe Rogan's shock at deportations is a very good example of this. The alternative is to do nothing and continue letting the lawless approach of immigration go on and continue watching public support for immigration collapse when we need it the most and watch more nativist political figures rise to meet the demand. The alternative is to sit back as watch as American political institutions crumble under a citizenry that doesn't believe the country exists to serve their interests anymore. Jay will have this audience believe by the end of tonight that what we need to do is be more nice. And if Americans don't wake up tomorrow feeling more nice about illegal immigration, then they should be ignored or forced to stomach the status quo of being surrounded by 11 to 18 million strangers, unaccounted for individuals in this country. A bone is going to have to be thrown to keep this country together and get us back on the path of majority support for controlled immigration that strengthens the United States. That bone is enhanced funding and capacity for mass deportations, which is within the right of any nation state to do and within the right of a self-governing people to demand.
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you to both of you, gentlemen, not only for being here, but for making such nice opening statements. That was the most, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was very good for both of you. Just a kind reminder to the audience. We, of course, will get through our debate and then we will go into closing statements and we will read and respond to your kind super chats along with following up with open panel dumpster fire. I do have one small additional note to make this evening. As most of you know of my dog, Nix. Nix blew her knee out over the weekend. She's almost 11 years old and will be requiring surgery to fix it. So just know all of the funding here, that's where we're going with it. Support the dog fund. We'll make that work. All right, gentlemen, I leave the floor open to you.
Yeah, just before we start, there's still a bell going off in my ear. Is that able to go off?
I think that's you. I don't hear a bell.
Well, I don't have a bell. It's your buzzer bell. You just turned it off. Okay. Where shall we begin?
I could respond to what you say. You want to go in that?
Yeah,
order?
I spoke second, so you can dive in. Yeah.
Sure. I think it seems to me that the crux of your argument is that Americans do not like how immigration has been going, and they need to change. So we either do this or we do nothing. Is that fair?
Yeah, I am saying that we actually need to respond to the desires of the American public to roll back what has happened with immigration, at least in the past 4 years. What happened under the Biden administration was particularly unpopular and offensive to most people. The scale at which it was happening and so rapidly flooding people's communities coast to coast in this country is something that needs to be rolled back. You're never going to roll back, the decades of illegal immigration that we've had in this country that have not been addressed by the legal system or by Congress. But you can absolutely roll back what happened in the last 4 years and track down a great amount of people who got in here while the gate was wide open. And if the voters want that, they should be given it.
Yeah, my concern is that I think the voters don't know what the fuck they're looking at. Almost everybody who came here in the last 4 years came here legally. These were asylum seekers. That is a legal process. And Republicans sat on their hands and refused to vote on a bill from James Langford so that Trump could win the presidency. It's really hard for me to accept this idea that Republicans actually want to fix immigration when they sat on their hands and refused to pass a bill that would have effectively shut down the border, closed the border for months at a time. At the time, we had 8,000 people coming across the border, and James Langford bill would have shut down the border because the 7-day rolling average would have been over 5,000. We would have shut that down. But almost everybody, if you look at illegal immigration during the Biden administration, that number actually was down. It was legal immigration, and it's fair to say that a lot of these people had asylum claims that will not be approved, and that they didn't have a legitimate asylum claim.
That is such a stretch. That is.
I mean, I'm saying probably
90%.
Stretch. Probably 90% of them. But that's what's crazy about this. None of those people that came during the Biden administration are eligible for deportation under Trump's new strategy. Those people are here under an asylum process. If they haven't had their asylum claim heard, they're not being deported.
That is such a bizarre claim. I don't even know where to begin. The asylum process is a real thing that exists. When you go through the border, you go through these checkpoints, and then you get paired up with a case, a judge who's managing all these different cases. These catch and release cases, which were, they were 6,500 a day when we were looking at 2022 coming into this country. We are upwards of 4 million or something just in the past couple of years. These are not all legal. That's a really, really weird rhetorical trick to try to play.
How's that not legal?
When
if
people
they come
are
claiming asylum, isn't that legal?
God, claiming asylum. So just because
that's the process,
no,
though, right?
Just because you know that you can say the word asylum does not mean that you just walk across the border and shout it and it becomes.
Actually, it does.
And it does not. It does not
it
become
does.
true. And
it
so my question,
my question
for you, hold on. My question for you is, what is the limiting principle on this? Because I'll give you one where I will throw a bone. I said that earlier, like Venezuela. That's a good example of a country, political unrest is falling apart. If you oppose the regime, you'll be killed or detained or locked up. There's a pretty good case for a lot of people fleeing Venezuela and trying to get up to the United States as quick as possible to avoid that kind of persecution. But if you just sort of take that and go, wow, South America is a mess, the entire continent is overrun by political turmoil and drug cartels, then you're basically just saying that, oh, shit has gone south down below the border. They can all come up here. That is not how this has ever worked. It's not how it's intended, or I don't even think that's how you want it to work.
Stephen, if you come to this country and you walk across the border and you claim asylum, what are you entitled to?
Oh, you want me to respond on the spot? You are entitled to a case manager to actually look at your claim and determine whether or not there is a threat of meaningful violence to you upon your return home.
Right. And if that claim cannot be heard immediately, what happens? You can remain in the country until your claim is heard, right?
Yes.
Okay, so almost everybody that came here during the Biden administration came here under the asylum process, which means that none of these people that you're talking about from the Biden administration, they're not being deported right now. You're going into workplaces, you're going into courts, you're going into communities. None of the people right now that are being deported are asylum seekers that came during the Biden administration. My biggest contention, and I'm going to be honest, like, it's a little bit sad to hear this. My biggest contention is that Americans support Donald Trump's deportation. Well, you said about 60% that we want to deport people because they don't know what the fuck they're looking at. They have no clue. It's the same people that believed that in Springfield they were eating the cats and eating the dogs, and that wasn't true. Nobody knows what they're looking at because one party has decided to show up every single day and lie about what's going on at our southern border. They lied about it the entire time. There was nothing Joe Biden could have done. Joe Biden could not unilaterally change the amnesty laws. The amnesty laws were written in a bipartisan manner in Langford's bill, so they would change it, and that would have stopped all the traffic at the border on that day. It would have stopped all the traffic at the border. But Republicans said, we want Donald Trump to run on how broken our border is, so they allowed this just to continue to fester through Biden's entire presidency so they could run on fixing amnesty, and they still haven't done it. We're still not fixing amnesty.
Would you have liked to see the traffic at the border stopped?
Sure.
Why?
Because it was too many people.
Oh, really? It was too many people? You said there was no situation at the border. You just said it was a lie that there was a humanitarian crisis at the border.
No.
What do you mean it's overrun?
No, I said they lied about what was happening at the border. They said that these were illegal immigrants pouring across our border. And that's not the case. These were almost exclusively legal immigrants pouring across our border.
And you said it was too much.
Yes, which is why we needed to which is why we have to change our amnesty laws, which can only be done through Congress. But Republicans sat on their hands to make sure Donald Trump won the election. They refused to do anything for 2 straight years so that Donald Trump could win an election and then still do nothing about amnesty. We still haven't fixed the problem.
No, I just find this to be puzzling as a line of attack that you sort of want the Langford approach to have actually passed to stop the flow at the border. You say it's too many people, but you also sort of hand wave it away as if there is no problem.
No, I'm not doing that. No, there's a massive problem. I don't understand why you guys lie about it. I don't understand why you don't tell the American people the truth. The truth is,
you're not talking to a Republican member of Congress. You're talking to a guy who lives here. So there is no you guys.
You don't seem to know this, Stephen. You don't seem to know that these people were amnesty seekers. No, so I'm curious where you got your information.
I do know that people come across and shout the word amnesty.
That's the law.
Look, you can manipulate the law 100 different ways.
So how do you change the law then?
Coming across the border and shouting amnesty because your countries have been run into the ground and poorly run is not something that you can just walk across the border, board a train, hide in someone's trunk, go below the floorboards of an 18-wheeler, come into the country, and then disappear.
Yeah, most of those things are things that weren't happening. These people you could literally watch the lines at Eagle Pass. There were lines, like hour-long lines. I have a friend who was down there golfing, taking video of the people on the other side of the wall, waving at him, waiting in line. I just don't understand, Stephen, how you recognize that our amnesty laws are broken, and this is what Republicans seem to want to do right now. They say the amnesty laws are broken. Those that know, or at least or learn that the amnesty laws are why we had all this immigration, and then they say we should do something about it, and that thing we should do about it is not to fix the law. We should just start deporting people. Why not fix the law?
Why not deport people who aren't supposed to be here?
They are, but that's not these people who came. Most of these people, again, Stephen, none of the people that you're talking about that came in during the Biden administration, almost none are the people being deported now, because those people still have protected status because of amnesty.
In Mexico, like you don't have to do things the way that the Biden administration was doing it.
Mexico said no, they didn't want to do it anymore.
Maybe they don't get to say no. They're a weaker and lesser country than we are. We can tell them what they're going to do if you actually twist people's wrists.
Do you notice how already you have resorted to forcing other countries to do it your way because you don't want to admit that, like, you guys just don't know what's going on?
I mean, geopolitics is a real thing. You can make other countries do things that you want.
Yeah,
them to do.
So is legislation, and we could do that. But Republicans didn't want to do that because I think the reality is Republicans know that they don't have real things to run on, so they're going to run on fear. That's why you can't see a Republican go on a microphone without saying the words Lake and Riley. That's why they do. That's why they lied to you about eating the cats and eating the dogs. That's why the constant fear mongering. That's why Trump sent in the National Guard to California to fear monger and said the whole city's on fire. These are riots. It was like a handful of incidents. That's why. It's because instead of doing the right thing, instead of doing things the right way, this party, for whatever reason, has said, we're not doing legislation anymore. We're not fixing laws anymore. We are going to hand over all the power to Donald Trump, and we are blindly going to follow what he does. And that has led to U.S. citizens being detained, U.S. citizens being arrested. That has caused 75% of the people in CCOT who are serving life sentences in El Salvador, their only crime was a misdemeanor of overstaying a visa or crossing the border. We've chosen cruelty rather than just use the laws and fix it.
Well, I mean, if you're going to kind of keep going back to immigration reform and doing some sort of bill, I mean, I think you know that I'm in favor of that. Legislation is absolutely what this country needs, and then in the absence of legislation that addresses immigration, sets up a pathway. And when people say get in line for immigration, there is no line. You will wait 20 years to go through a legal process in this country, and it is a huge, huge problem, and it is a national embarrassment. But we are talking about deportations and whether or not they do more harm than good. And so I want to redirect the conversation back to the spirit of this country and what I think people are so angry about and what they are clearly reflecting their anger in their voting habits. I am deeply concerned, and someone in the chat was mocking the idea of the crumbling American institutions, but like, this is true. And you talked about it as well, Jay, the crumbling trust in American institutions. Public trust is eroding, and a huge part of this has to do not only with immigration, but just a feeling that people are not being heard by their government. The immigration issue, people want addressed. People also want to know their neighbors. They want to know the people who live in their neighborhood. They want to feel connected to other Americans. I think this is a huge, huge problem. I'm actually legitimately terrified.
What does knowing your neighbors have to do with immigration?
It has a lot to do.
Are you saying
with
that you can't know them if they're from another culture?
What I'm saying is that when you have neighbors living next door, crowded into a house, maybe 5-6 contractor trucks who all live in the single family home next door, and what laugh?
I mean, that's a bizarre.
No, you laugh.
There's illegal immigrants all around me.
You laugh as if that doesn't happen.
No, you're acting like that's the norm. That's not the norm. I live in Arizona. That's not the norm.
It is absolutely the norm.
Where do you live?
I live in the DC area. So I live
I can tell you in a border state, I can tell you unequivocally
that is not
the norm.
Which is, I find it puzzling to laugh at it. In Manassas, Virginia, it is absolutely the norm. Most of the single family homes in this borough that I live in, you can just kind of see which ones are occupied by 5-6 contractor trucks. People who are not tied into the community. Why is that a problem? Let me finish my sentence. People who are not tied into the community, people who are living together, going to work, coming home. They're never contributing anything to the place that they live. They have simply bought up real estate that was intended for families who are going to do events together in their neighborhoods, families that are going to know each other, have cookouts, have kids who play together. But a lot of our real estate across this area is just being gobbled up by people who don't actually have any legal status in the country and don't contribute to the community.
But
that is a real problem.
If I played those exact words, or if I just wrote down those words and I put them on a piece of paper and I said, this guy's talking about segregation in the civil rights era, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's the exact same argument. I don't like these people.
The guy who was talking about the cheap crops and the cheap labor. You're going to lecture me on segregationism?
Your argument is legitimately. Your argument
who's going to grow the corn?
Steven, if you're going to be Steven, now who's interrupting? Your argument legitimately is there's a house that has 4 or 5 trucks in front of it, and they don't hang out with us, and Americans don't want that. So let's get rid of them. How am I supposed to take that any other way than racist? How's a different way I can take that?
a violation of zoning laws for one.
Sorry.
No, it's like
That's what we're worried about is fucking zoning laws.
It is what we're fucking worried about.
Why are we worried about zoning laws?
Because the zoning laws, particularly like in this area in Northern Virginia, and you'll probably find this in different places in Arizona and Texas, depending on whether or not the city council there is Democratic or Republican, will opt to not enforce the zoning laws for things like overcrowding and then the purchasing of residential family units and single family homes to be used as hybrid workspaces for, again, contractors. And a lot of the city council people in cities that do this, that basically throw their zoning codes out the window, they are doing it because these are Latino voters who they are counting on them to reelect them in the next cycle. No, it's not. This
is embarrassing.
No.
Imagine. I'm just imagining
Jay,
today's the 5th of July. Imagine telling our founding fathers.
MSNBC
imagine telling our founding fathers that 250 years from now, what we'd be arguing about is overcrowding in a house and fucking zoning laws, and that we were choosing to get rid of people out of this country they have 5 work trucks, so all 5 of those people are working. Imagine telling our founding fathers that this working family needs to be removed because there's too many of them in one house, and that makes me feel icky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is honestly like it's pathetic. We want to run people out of this country because we don't like that there's too many cars on the side of our neighborhoods and that too many people live in one house.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's the most elitist shit I've ever heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just,
especially
that's your viewpoint. That's your viewpoint.
Especially
but for everybody out there that doesn't live in a nice neighborhood, for everybody out there, no matter what you look like, that has to rent a room because you can't afford a place of your own, for everybody out there that's had to move back in with their parents, for everybody out there who's had to move their parents back in with them, for everybody out there who's ever housed a friend who didn't have a place to live, or
the streamer has awakened.
Just know that if Stephen was in your neighborhood, Stephen would be going directly to the HOA and being like, these guys are making my street look bad, and I don't like that. It's fucking Karen over here.
And it has a lot to do with social trust and cohesion. People move to certain communities in this country expecting a certain thing. They do actually.
Why don't you trust them?
They do join things like HOAs because
why don't you trust these people?
Because there is a social compact in their neighborhoods, and it is actually corrosive to the heart and soul of the country.
Why don't you trust these people? What about having 5 work trucks?
Why can't you follow the rules of the Raging Tomato and shut up for 5 seconds?
Stephen, you've done the same thing. With all due respect, I'm asking you. It's a whole discussion.
Jay,
I just want to know why you don't trust these people.
Now,
I know you have
both of you were having a lot of fun bantering backstage, and I think we all had a good time. But let's get to the crux of it. Stephen, finish your thought, and then back to you, Jay.
Yeah, these things matter. You can kind of laugh and hand wave again, things like zoning, things like overcrowding in American communities. I think you're sort of painting this very strange picture of me living in some fancy DC suburb. I actually live in a really shitty townhome community in Manassas where you're going to step on either a condom or a broken bottle on any time you walk your dog. But like, that's life here. And one of the things that's most striking to me is that on my right side, we have a Guatemalan family. On my left side, it's Venezuelans, and then one down, Mexicans, and then after that, Chinese, and then a Black family. And every single one of these families, the Venezuelans in particular, immigrated here recently. They are new to the country. They all have, like legal status. They all bought their homes. And they are all Trump voters. And it's like, it's one of these weird things where they're like, we got here and these people who are coming into this neighborhood are insane. They're overcrowding into homes. We don't know these like 20 guys who lived in the townhome next door to our daughters. I remember the Venezuelan woman next door to me. She came over.
Stephen, with all due respect,
I am going to finish.
I don't need to hear the stories of all your neighbors.
You're going to fucking listen to the story. You're going to fucking listen to the story.
Let me add in, it is fairly anecdotal, right?
No, this is important.
It is fairly anecdotal.
We have 2 hours to do this shit.
But land the plane.
I'm going to land the plane. I just remember this Venezuelan woman coming over with her daughter and using her to translate and just going like, we didn't come here to have 20 guys from Guatemala packed into the house next door who we don't know and we don't trust. Like, these things actually matter to people who come here and immigrate to this country as well. And you just want to keep having these MSNBC conversations about immigration bills in Congress. And I'm trying to talk about brass tacks. Brass
This
tacks.
isn't brass tacks. Brass tacks is the legislation. You want to tell me more stories about your neighbor that we can't even verify, and how for some reason these Venezuelan immigrants are upset about these Guatemalan immigrants that have too many people in the house. We're supposed to talk about is this helping or hurting? This is silly. Like I gave you so many numbers in there. Economically, it's a net positive that we have illegal immigration here. It keeps Medicaid afloat. It keeps Medicare afloat. It keeps Social Security afloat. And getting rid of all these people will be a net loss to our economy. And you want to tell me more about your neighbor's feelings? The problem with America is we're too driven by feelings. That's what allows somebody from Venezuela to be like, I'm a Trump supporter. That's insane. The reason that people are here from Venezuela is because Donald Trump staged a coup in Venezuela to try and overthrow their president. And when that didn't work out, and he decided, like, we're not going to buy your oil anymore. And that was 80% of their economy. 80% of their economy is oil, and we buy 50% of that. We crashed their economy overnight, and it was so bad that on Trump's way out the door, he wrote a special executive order saying, due to our actions in Venezuela, these Venezuelan citizens
are we going to land the plane about a Venezuelan coup attempt?
The time that you spoke. And by the way, it's real policy. So to tell me, like, these Venezuelan immigrants who are only here because Donald Trump fucked up their country is a good argument. I think that everybody that's here, that is here illegally, that's working, should be granted amnesty. And I gave you numbers and figures to back that up. And you're telling me stories that nobody can verify. And you're telling me I'm MSNBC. You sound like you're on a CNN panel. I'm talking about real legislation. Don't MSNBC me. I'm begging you to talk numbers, and you want to tell me more about what your neighbors think.
So I guess there's no hug after this one.
I'll still hug him.
I mean, this guy just said that Donald Trump wrecked Venezuela. I just would like everybody in the audience to remember this moment. So
why did he write the executive order then on his way out the door?
What?
Oh, you don't know about the executive order he wrote on the way out the door that gave TPS to Venezuelans because of our actions in Venezuela?
Oh yeah, no, you're talking about temporary protection.
Yeah, why do you do that?
Mostly because a lot of Venezuelans who come here are going to be anti-socialist, and he wants to put them into the Republican voting base.
Why were they coming here?
Because Venezuela has been a socialist hellhole for a long time, and you
has nothing to do with us not buying their oil anymore.
I mean, we don't have to buy anybody's oil.
I know we don't, but when we stop buying their oil and it tanks their economy, guess what? They don't have anywhere to go, so they show up here.
I do want to try to get off of Venezuela here because
I would like you to answer that question.
This is a bizarre side trail.
Every time we get close to an answer, you run from. I want to know why they're here. Why did so many Venezuelans show up at our border? What happened in their country? If it wasn't what I said, that we staged a coup, by the way, you can look that up. It was legitimately a United States military contractor. They got caught trying to stage the coup. And then the response to that was, we're going to stop buying your oil. And we stopped buying their oil, and it tanked their economy. Go look it up.
Maybe they shouldn't nationalize their oil.
Why shouldn't they nationalize their oil? We should force capitalism on them. They can't even make their own
registered Republican
now.
Or something.
They can't make their own decisions. We have to tell them, you can't nationalize your oil. And if you do, and you don't let BP come down there and sell your oil, then we're going to cut off oil purchases from you, and we're going to destroy your economy.
I have a question for you about the GDP issue from your opening statement.
Sure.
Do you actually care about American GDP? Because I watch some of your streams. I do enjoy some of your tangents and rants. And I find it odd to me sometimes when folks come out of the left sort of just charging towards the economic argument about sort of America's capitalistic economy and, oh, whoa, the GDP. And I just kind of don't believe you actually care about that, because you don't view the system as legitimate anyways, but yet you want these
I don't view the system
workers
as legitimate. What do you mean by that?
You strike me as someone who does not view the capitalist economy of the United States as legitimate.
We don't have a capitalist. We have a mixed economy. It's a fucking stupid thing that everybody in this world does, including socialists.
Economy, yeah.
The socialists do it and the capitalists do it. You guys always argue about what's better. There's not a single country on earth that has a capitalist economy or a socialist one. They're all fucking mixed.
Do you care about GDP?
I advocate for the best solutions, and you're now just casting aspersions on what you think I believe, rather than addressing any of these arguments, Stephen. I just don't know why you're not engaging in any of the arguments. You keep going back to my feelings now.
It's a new argument. Do you care about GDP taking a hit?
Yes.
Why?
Because GDP taking a hit in this case would mean that farmers lose their farms, and that farmland inevitably is going to be bought up by corporations who are going to do factory farming. Where's the capital going to come from when we can't export their goods, when they lose all their money? We're either going to have to bail them out, or we're going to have to take capital from corporations who are going to do corporate farming, which is going to give us less nutritious food that is nutrient lacking, and meat filled with hormones. Isn't this the Maha movement?
I thought this was already happening. One of the things
it is, and I would like to undo that. And so I thought you guys were on board with that.
One of the things that I think my politics have evolved in the past couple of years, and really being a little bit more skeptical about this, is just like how much of a house of cards our economy is, all the way down to things like farming and how we get food onto our shelves. And, I was kind of throwing a stone at you earlier about like, oh, who's going to pick the crops? Because this kind of comes up a lot in the issue of immigration. And it alludes to basically a two-tiered society where we have all these kind of legal, documented workers and citizens who all have things like, well, hopefully some kind of health insurance, and they have some sort of affordability in their lives. And then we have these people who I think Bernie Sanders used to recognize a little bit more clearly, which is the folks coming in, being paid just incredibly substandard wages, and also allowing agriculture and farmers and producers to produce goods that are artificially cheap for the American economy, and making Americans think that this thing that they have, this system, that they actually are getting prices that are reflective of the goods that they buy. I've grown to really have sort of a spiritual problem with this. I think it is a real rot in the heart of America. And so when you talk to me about GDP taking a hit, and you talk about family farms and even big farms like taking this big hit because they lose their workers, I'm kind of at a point where I think that might be for the higher good of the United States. I really
corporations doing all our farming.
No. So I would like to try to do,
look, if those
Jay, I'd like to try to do a good faith conversation here for a minute.
I know. I'm going to ask you a question. If these farms go under, and you say it's for the greater good, who's going to buy those? Who's going to buy up those farms? Who's going to manufacture farm produce? Who's going to do that?
No, like you said, probably corporations.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but
and you think that's better for us?
Well, that's a separate argument. I think one of
it's
the
not a separate argument.
No,
it's another path. It's the problem with the path that we always take. We hurt farmers, and we hand it off to the capitalists, the free market capitalists, the vulture capitalists, and then they don't pay anybody a decent wage. Nobody is able to make any sort of generational wealth, and we all become employees to a handful of oligarchs.
You are a master of like the shotgun scatter shot. There's so many arguments that you could pick up on.
It'd be nice if you would address any of them. Just pick one.
Well, a little thing for you. If you actually shot, one shot at a time, it could be responded to, but you don't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll slow it down.
Well, you should try to not do that. I do want to stick on this though, because the issue of like the actual value of our goods that are created in this economy, I think it is actually bad for us to continue to go down this path where things are artificially cheap and created on substandard labor in conditions that are just not reflective of, I think, anything that Americans actually want or expect out of their economy. It's not good. It is a rot in the heart of this country.
So we should deport everybody?
Well, what we need to do is we need to respond to the will of the voters and deport people
Steven,
who
come
don't have...
Link your fucking argument, please. Link it. You can't just I'm not asking you your beliefs on other shit. We're talking about immigration.
No, continue. Debate yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm asking Link, can you link that's what I'm asking. So we should deport them? That's the solution?
Yes.
How does that accomplish your goal?
Well, my goal is to actually try to heal some of the political fabric in this country where people believe that this is a representative democracy.
Talking about cheap goods, Stephen. You were talking about cheap goods.
Well, you asked me about my goal.
You said we want to fix this production of cheap goods. We're talking about immigration. That's what this debate is. I'm wondering how mass deportation would fix the problem that you're just addressing of cheap goods.
Oh, things will get more expensive. In case you're not following, things will get more.
Good?
Well, it's going to be really freaking painful for this country to understand just how subsidized their goods are by cheap illegal labor. and I would say unethical labor. And again, this is not an argument that I enjoy.
Then what?
This is not an
Once
argument
everything
that
gets
I
more
enjoy
expensive,
making.
then what?
Once everything gets more expensive, then what? What?
What you're saying? We're going to deport the labor. Everything will get more expensive. People will realize that things were too cheap. Then what?
Yeah. So then I think actually once you go through a period of people understanding how things get made in this country, I think you can actually get public opinion in this country back to a point where there is more support for immigration. You sort of actually have to do a little bit of knocking one leg out of the stool for people to understand how this country works. Immigration and support for it is declining year over year over year. We actually, like I said, need to get it back to a point where it goes up. There is no better way to do that in a healthy way and to encourage immigration reform and a legal process than enforcing the law on illegal immigrants, actually reducing the amount of all these different sectors to subsidize their goods with cheap labor, make things more expensive, and bring Americans a little bit back to the reality, which is that immigrant labor is very valuable in this country. We would just like them to have paperwork. That's all.
So why not give them amnesty?
I mean, we mentioned that in the beginning of this conversation. I'm generally in favor of a pathway to citizenship. It's common sense to me, but that is
then why
not,
deport people and not do amnesty?
and that's just not what's happening. This motion is about.
I know. I'm
whether or not
asking you why you don't
deportations-
support amnesty rather than this way.
So I support, in a perfect world where I can wave a magic wand, I would probably do amnesty, and then I would do, some sort of aggressive process of going over everybody's criminal records and any trouble that they've gotten into in the United States once they're in the system, and then they are thus removed. But again, that's not the world that we live in. We're talking about deportations that are happening in the Trump administration, whether or not they're a net good or a net bad. And the deportations, I believe, are a net good because this country is actually in a democracy crisis. On the level of people actually believing that their vote in this country counts and believing that this system responds to their desires. It's also a hugely corrosive thing to have illegal immigrants being counted in states like California, for example, where they would probably lose at least 2 seats of their 52 seats in Congress if they were not.
How many would they lose in Texas?
I don't know.
2. How many would they lose in Florida?
I don't know.
1.5.
Yeah, they're going to.
Why do you only? It's weird how you only bring up California, but I would like to go back to this again. What you're saying right now,
what you're saying right now is
where people live. We're doing mass deportation. That you don't agree with it. You'd prefer amnesty, but there's a problem.
I do agree with it.
Americans think that there's an immigration problem. So in order to regain Americans' trust, we need to do mass deportations. I have an alternate solution. How about Republicans stop fucking lying about everything? Everything. How about they stop lying about who was coming to the border? That those weren't illegal immigrants, that those were asylum seekers. How about we stop lying about the fact that we're only going to go after violent criminals when 75% of the arrests that happened in LA, non-violent criminals. 70% of the people that were thrown in prison in El Salvador have no criminal history outside of being here illegally, and they are getting life sentences in El Salvador. How about that? Why don't you guys just stop fucking lying so that the people in America aren't so goddamn confused? The problem that we have is Donald Trump's a liar, and every Republican is a cuck sitting in the chair with their dick in their hand saying, Donald Trump, fuck this country harder, please. Keep lying, and we'll just lie for you. We'll just repeat all your dumbass lies. We'll repeat the lie that they're eating people's pets. We'll repeat the lie that they're only sending their worst. We'll repeat the lie that there were migrant caravans of military-aged men coming to our border to invade us. We'll repeat the lie of the replacement theory. We'll just scare you guys into allowing us to deport people rather than tell the truth. When are you guys, you're talking about morality, when are you guys going to start being honest?
That's not important at all, morality.
I think honesty is important. I think that the biggest problem we have in this country is currently that Republicans lie about everything. They lied about the big, beautiful bill. They lie about deportation. In fact, I can't think of a thing Republicans aren't lying about. They lie about everything. Why don't you guys start there? Stop electing a guy that literally cannot tell the truth. He can't do it. He still can't say he lost it in 2020. And Republicans aren't allowed to say it. If they go before Congress and they say, did Trump win in 2020? They're like, oh, I'm not going to answer that. Because everybody's so cucked to Donald Trump. That's the problem that we have in this country, is we can't have real conversations until one party stops lying about everything.
You hear that, chat? Everybody's cucked and everybody's lying. Everything that you feel, and you look around your communities and you look around the country and feel like it is not the same, that you don't know your neighbors, that people aren't speaking English in places where it would be obvious and common sense. The quality of your public schools is absolutely the same as it was in the 1990s and 80s when you grew up. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed, and it has nothing at all to do with an unprecedented influx of migrants from around the world, and particularly south of the border.
Agreed. So link why. So let's talk about public education. I live in Arizona. We are ranked 50th in public education. And you can look at the decline of Arizona education, where we've had immigrants for as long as Arizona's been around. When did the decline happen in Arizona? When did we start falling? School choice, Stephen. It bankrupted our schools. It bankrupted public schools. It underfunded public schools. And now we're ranked 50th. And who's number 49? Oklahoma, who is also doing school choice. But the easy thing to do, Stephen, is to blame immigrants and be like, look at those people who aren't speaking our same language. They're the problem. It couldn't possibly be that Republicans turn everything into profit, so they don't want public education to be good. They have to have a profit motive for public.
So many things. You named so many things. Now we're talking about school choice in Arizona. Oh my God.
You talked about 20 things that I chose one, public education. And now I'm explaining how red states suck at education because of this, but you blame it on immigrants because you just let your politicians lie. The immigrants didn't cause the problems in your schools, Stephen. It was Republicans who won't fund the schools, who keep giving tax breaks to billionaires.
Having a debate with somebody who's not actually here in the room with us. I would like to know, is like Rick Santorum in the room, like talking?
I'm sorry, did you bring up schools or not, Stephen?
I brought up schools, and
did you blame immigrants for that?
I know that you're very used to this sort of like Twitch, like, bare knuckle brawling kind of thing. I'm not really interested. I would actually like to try to
answer that question.
I'd like to try to finish.
Did you blame immigrants for it or not?
So what I was saying was that
talk about something else.
I'm just going to sit back. I've lost interest.
Let's reset the panel. Chat, don't forget we have a good cause going, and I will be grifting hard for the next couple weeks. Our lovely Nix, my dog, 11 years old, blew her knee out this weekend and will need surgery. So please feel free to continue sending those super chats, and don't forget to hit the like button. There's 400 of you watching and only 112 likes. I'm very disappointed. Gentlemen, I'd like to kind of like stir it back to maybe the initial opening statements. If there's something in there you want to dig back into specifically. I know we talked about the farming. I know that was a big piece of it. I would be interested in learning more about that in terms of the like how much we're losing versus how much we're gaining. We kind of tapped into it, but then we lost that piece. If maybe you want to start there, or if there's something else better you'd want to kick off with.
Jay always has something to talk about.
I do.
I do. Getting along so well backstage. What happened?
Well, I think what we're seeing here is that Stephen doesn't want to answer questions. That's what we're seeing right now. Doesn't want to have a conversation. But I'll cover that. If you want to look at
you hear that, chat? I don't want to have a conversation. Yes.
So
Stephen,
maybe
you got mad that I asked you a question.
Let's kick off with maybe like one piece at a time, and let's keep it like Q&A style. We can go yes and no, or yes and no and and maybe we could bring it back together there. Let's try that.
Well, I would say this. The cost of illegal immigration seems to be, by most estimates, around $50 billion a year. Illegal immigrants bring in $100 billion a year in revenue. They are a net positive economically. So in order for me to want to get rid of illegal immigrants, I'm gonna have to see some harm. And it seems to me that most of the harm that Republicans are telling us about are their feelings. Their feelings are harmed. And so we have to make economic sacrifices to cater to the feelings of some Republicans who don't like that their communities look different.
Yeah, my argument is not about the money that they bring in and how much we can extract value from these individuals who come into this country and work substandard and cheap labor. My argument is actually about rules. It is about process. It's about what people think is right. And the immigration system in this country has outstripped what people think and expect from people coming in here and joining their communities, working in their workplaces, working their farms. This is not what people voted for, and it is undemocratic the way that this is played out. I don't really care about the dollars and cents of this, and I hope that you find that as like a token of respect that I'm saying that to you, because what I find frustrating in debates about this stuff is when people gaslight their way through debates and they pretend to care about every single element of an issue when they don't. Again, like, I still don't believe that you care about GDP. I could be wrong. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. I actually just care about the process, the fact that people are here illegally. They're not supposed to be, and that it is wrong, and that they have to go, and that the United States has a right to deport people who are in their country without their consent.
Look, it falls on deaf ears when you're like, it's about rules, and you elected a felon. And it's about rules, but they lied to you right to your face. Pam Bondi and Donald Trump lied right to your face and said, Abrego Garcia, he got due process. He got it. And he clearly didn't. And they lie. They lie to you all the time about the law. They're breaking the law. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that they're breaking the law. They lied to you when they tell you that these people did break the law that came in under Biden, and they didn't. They're amnesty seekers. Again, when you say like, oh, I don't believe you care about GDP, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm a numbers person. I'm looking at the numbers. I don't care if you think I care about it or not. But for you to have the audacity to say,
the audacity,
I care about the process, and I care about the law. Get the fuck out of here. You can't be a Trump person and care about the law. You can't be a Trump person after he pardons all these J6ers and then be like, look at these riots in LA. Can you believe it? We got it. These people are crazy. I just don't believe you. I think, Stephen, that you came underprepared for this debate, and you're trying to go back on your feelings. And you don't want to debate the numbers because it's pretty evident that you don't have any numbers to back up what you're saying. So you're doing what I would probably do too. I'd say, I don't want to talk about the numbers. I'd like to talk about the law and what's right and what's wrong. But you guys, you tend to not care so much when the law is right or wrong, when it's your people breaking the law.
I mean, I don't know anything about Trump voters and Trump supporters and voting for lawless Republicans. You again are like miscasting me and strawmanning me for fun. But I actually
do just bring up the election that all these people voted for this. Those are Trump voters, right?
I do actually think that a lot of people who are in our audience today and watching, when I was running for city council last year and just meeting people in my area, there are people who pretend that they care about certain economic questions, the dollars and cents, but most people actually just care about a moral principle or a principle of what they bring to every single policy. And there is a right or wrong thing that actually matters here. When people come into your country uninvited, overstay their welcome, won't leave, and then when you try to make them leave, they burn down a couple of blocks of Los Angeles.
What they burn down? What blocks did they burn down in Los Angeles, Steve?
Torch the Waymos.
Which blocks?
Steven? Oh, actually,
that's what I'm talking about. You're lying.
There's a good, because I see what's going on. We bring up a thought and then we kind of like stray into the weeds. Stephen, you mentioned the moral portion of things. I'd like to break that down between the two of you and break down the morality between either coming into a country uninvited or even more so booting somebody out who is not legally here. There's a moral foundation built into that. Can the two of you find that foundation and break it down on why it's moral or immoral in either direction?
Yeah, I think Jay could find some, but I'm not sure RTP Talks can. So I'm curious which version of yourself.
Stupid, man. This is
I'm not sure which version of yourself will actually answer that question.
Keep casting those aspersions, Stephen. Well done.
I will.
Yeah, I think that it is immoral to come into this country illegally. I think that it is immoral to come here and overstay your visa, which 90% of the people that are here came here legally and overstayed their visas. I think that in itself is immoral. That's fine. I also find it immoral and more immoral to rip families apart when there are better solutions. The thing about the Republicans is they love to talk about the morality of like, oh, we've got to keep our laws. Well, we could also change our laws. We don't have to use these laws. We could change them. We could do what Ronald Reagan did. Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to 3 million people. And guess what? Those people committed crimes at lower rate. It increased the tax revenue that was coming in. It increased workers. It bolstered local economies. We've done this before. We could do it again. But the problem that I have is the people claiming the moral high ground are literally being inhumane. They are deporting people. They're putting them in Alligator Alcatraz, which is a dumb name, but it's already leaking. If a hurricane comes through there, they won't be treated well. What the lack of humanity while claiming morals blows my fucking mind. I can agree that it's immoral to break the law, but that's a misdemeanor. It's as immoral as any other misdemeanor.
Yeah, no, I think we agree again that it would be better if this country would do comprehensive immigration reform. I wish that would happen. But the fact of the matter is, it has not been able to work its way through Congress. It doesn't look like it's going to happen again. Why? Because usually Republicans want everything, and then Democrats want everything, and nobody's actually willing to meet on anything in the middle and burn some sacred cows. Like
it was a bipartisan bill.
We know why this doesn't happen.
James Lankford's a Republican. The Democrats signed on to it in the Senate. They sent it to the House. The House said, "Hey, look, we'll sign the Ukraine funding. We'll pay for Ukraine if you include a border bill." So the Senate included a border bill, and when it went to the House, Mike Johnson took the border bill, sat on it. They ran it back through as a standalone bill for the Ukraine funding. They approved the Ukraine funding, and they didn't approve the border bill.
Did you discover that politicians grandstand on issues?
And they didn't.
We know this.
And they didn't pass it because Donald Trump wanted to campaign on it. So how do you explain that to somebody, that Donald Trump let the border crisis keep going on until he was in power, but he also cares about the border? How do you have both of those positions?
I think it's a little bit ridiculous to claim that Donald Trump was like shadow governing while he was not in office and working his way through courtrooms. He has a lot of influence in the Republican caucus, but he was not the president of the United States. And it is actually the job of the current the then sitting president of the United States, Joe Biden, to try and govern and work with the rowdy people in Congress to bring people together. He was just not capable of doing that. We haven't had a president really since George W. Bush that got people or got a deal as far as it got during that time period. And
Joe Biden had multiple bills that were passed with bipartisan support. Trump has never had one.
But again, if the American public is at a point where they are so frustrated with the scale and the scope of illegal immigration that there is increased support for deportations and people who are in this country illegally, you give it to them. Like that is a democratic response to how people are feeling in this country. And if there are consequences, I think that there should be consequences. And I hope then that policy comes of that is good. Again, I would like to go back to my original motion that I would like to see the United States population triple in size over the next 20 years. I actually think it is a matter of the national interest and important for our competitiveness in the future to actually
deport 11 million people. That'll help us.
Yeah. So actually,
it's backwards.
Yeah. I know these are
Brilliant.
dollars. These are dollars and cents. But I do think that it would get us there in the long run. You have to have people actually believe in the immigration system if you're going to triple the size of the country in the long run. If people don't support immigration and you can't even get above the 50% mark, you're never going to get that growth. And part of actually getting us there is going to be cracking down on illegal migrants, getting people out of the country, and trying to renormalize immigration systems in this country and immigration politics, which has gone completely off the rails in our lifetime. It's important to stabilize that. I'm thinking long term here. If we can actually go through a period of pretty rigorous deportations with high costs, I think we can get back to a point where immigration and support for it in this country is positive.
Why would that triple the growth? Why would getting rid of immigrants triple the growth? People are going to be so happy to get rid of immigrants, they just start fucking constantly. Like everybody just gets hard because the immigrants are gone and they all just start fucking each other, and then we triple the population. Who the fuck's going to want to come to America?
What is in your coffee?
Who the fuck's going to want to come to America when we watch the way that we treat immigrants? Who is going to want to come here? People, we have a problem
miraculously.
We have a problem in Arizona right now.
Year.
One of the big problems we have in Arizona, if you go down into like the southern parts of Arizona, is that legal migrant labor won't come here anymore. So people who have been coming here for 20 years, who come here seeking seasonally for legal migrant labor that have the same protections as American citizens when it comes to being paid a living wage, they won't come here anymore. The farmers can't find anybody to work because nobody trusts our government. Because like I said, Donald Trump, you could say that people voted for this. Nobody voted for this. You're full of shit. Donald Trump said, I'm going to go after violent criminals. And 70% of who they're going after aren't violent criminals. You can't pretend. One of two things is true. Either Donald Trump lied and you guys didn't know it, or Donald Trump lied and you knew he lied. And now we're back to this situation where you guys seem to be all very upset about a problem. And I'd like to ask you a real question, Stephen. Outside of how immigrants make Republicans for some reason feel icky, what damage are immigrants as a whole, illegal immigrants as a whole, doing to this country?
What damage are illegal immigrants
outside of your feelings?
Outside of my feelings.
And as a whole, right? So you can't use individual examples of like this person robbed a store. As a whole, what is illegal immigration doing that hurts you outside of your feelings?
Yeah, so I would actually go back to distorting the way that representation is counted when we talk about the House of Representatives. 435 House seats that are dispersed based on the U.S. Census and the census of each state and reapportioned accordingly. I think there's actually a huge problem in this country being able to determine where we actually have the most people and who our constituents are. There was who's the congressman, the senator from Maryland who was dealing with Kilmar Abrego Garcia?
Holland? Is it Holland?
I can't remember. It was the Democratic senator who was dealing with Garcia when he was sent to El Salvador. Anyways, when he spoke to the press about going and sitting down and having that breakfast meeting with Garcia, he referred to him as his constituent. And that was really interesting to me. I was going, he's your constituent. He is not actually like a Maryland man. He is, in fact, an illegal immigrant. He's not a citizen.
Wait, no, he wasn't.
He was here
legally. Let
me please finish my thought, okay? Yeah. He's not a citizen. He's not voting in elections. He's not your constituent. Yes, and a lot of the politics, particularly in blue states, has gotten to be so warped where the public school systems, the city councils, the state legislatures are very much responding to the politics of illegal immigrants and people who are not actually supposed to be in this country. And that does actually pose a huge problem for the social fabric, trust in this country, credibility of our institutions, apportionment of seats in Congress. I know these things are boring to you, but I actually think that these things are really, really important. And
just don't count them on the census. You don't have to deport them.
I mean,
just don't count them on the census then.
I would love that, but they're not.
I mean, we have the same problem
because this is about power. Like a huge thing about immigration, it's about power. It's about how many people you command in your state. It's about how many voters you have. It is a huge factor that doesn't get discussed enough in the immigration fight.
So, Stephen, I just real quick for clarification, are you then going to oppose the representation that Republicans are going to garner for these detention facilities? Because I actually live next to Pinal County in Arizona, and like something like a third of that of like Florence, like a third of Florence, which is in Pinal County, their representation are people in prison. Those are people that cannot vote. Those are people that by the same measure that people who are here illegally. But that's what happens. Republicans put prisoners in their districts so that they count, and that's why you see all of these detention facilities. Where are they being built? In Republican areas.
Kentucky.
I just want to make sure you're going to oppose that too. When they count that for the census, you're going to oppose that, right?
Sure. Yeah. If what you're describing is, I don't know if what you're saying is true, but that sounds like something that scumbag people would do. I believe that politicians do scummy things all the time. I would.
So then why don't we just not count them on the census? Why do then we have to deport them? Because not counting them on the census would fix this problem.
Because Americans aren't crying out for census reform; they're crying out for deportation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have a racism problem. Let's be honest. And the reason that I say that, if you go to DHS right now, go to dhs.gov and go to their library. They have go to their media releases and go to their library, and you will see propaganda videos of them detaining immigrants. And I can give you as many hours as you want. I dare you to find me a white person who is being detained and videotaped and used as propaganda. Why are there no white people being detained? There's no white people on visa overstays.
I'm sure they're out there.
Well, where's the videos?
I don't know.
Why
seem
do
to
you
know.
think? Why do you think that DHS seems to only put up Hispanic people with tattoos?
I think it's because that's a pretty good descriptor of the individuals who are packed into the townhouse next door to me, like 20 of them, who nobody recognizes, trusts, or knows how to talk to. I think actually it is, in fact, what people are most worried about.
That's
which is
racism. You're describing racism right now.
No, so I
you're
mean,
describing looking at somebody with tattoos and saying that they are the problem. You're literally describing what you look at, being scared of it, and then wanting to get rid of it.
I really find like when the Democrats fell over themselves to defend the face tattoo guys in the El Salvador prison.
Oh, no, I don't give a shit about people with face tattoos. Post Malone has face tattoos. Should we get rid of him too?
No, but
no, not Post. Oh, he's white. My bad. Yeah, that's right. Not Post Malone.
I would be in favor of getting rid of him. We could deport him.
Yeah, he's white. He's whatever the color his tattoos are mostly, but yeah, he's a white guy.
Oh, I would have thought he was mixed with something.
He might be. He might be like part sheep. I'm not sure.
No, but I mean, like,
you're just describing that you're looking at things that you're scared of, Stephen, and you want them to go away. That's what you just described. I don't like this. It makes me nervous. It must go away.
The real you was there for like 10 seconds.
By the way, I think you're right.
To this. Okay.
I think you're correctly identifying that there are a lot of people in America that look at something that looks different than them, and they're fine overlooking everything else and being cruel because these people look differently. But if it was your dad who had been sent to CCOT, you would react a little bit differently. If your dad had just was guilty of a misdemeanor and was now in a life prison sentence in El Salvador, I think you would think differently.
That's my dad. He died 2 months ago. Good guy.
Well, fuck, that sucks. I'm sorry.
Okay,
you're a
fucking asshole.
Just fuck off. How am I supposed to know that your dad?
Only if he knew that.
I was just having fun with you.
Okay, my bad.
Calm down. He did.
Well, it was the first time you swore. It threw me off guard.
Yes.
You guys are killing me.
So let me go back to the racism point, because that's the real fun thing that everybody wants to talk about. I think people are smart and people make pretty clear differentiations between the kind of people who move into their neighborhood, what they look like, what they do, how they talk, and who they are with. And so it is pretty clear to most people in my neighborhood. And again, there's like this kind of one strip that's a bunch of black guys and black families. And they have like this high level. I know you don't like personal anecdotes from my life, but I'm going to give them to you anyways. There's like this high level of distrust again with like the overcrowded townhomes full of single males. That's sketchy. There's women going in and out of the house at weird hours of the night, mattresses being tossed out. It's sketchy as fuck. But
what's
then there's
sketchy about that?
There's the units that are the families.
Wait, what's sketchy about that?
I want to finish.
Okay.
Then there are the units that are the families. Nobody gives a shit. There are kids playing out in the front yard. They're playing water games in the back. They're grilling. And sure, there's like 15 of them. But it's like parents, lots of children, some cousins. And if you live in a neighborhood, and you and I are both girl dads, you're raising a family, you care a lot about that. You care a lot about whether or not the people next door are family, or if it's 20, 25-year-old males who are just smoking, cussing, tattooed as hell and just creepy. Like people care. No, people care about these things. And you can cast it immediately as racism, or you can say that people are actually quite discerning and they go, I'm against a house of 20 Latino males with tattoos who all are packing into this truck in the morning and coming back at night, but I'm completely for the Latino family. So explain to me like how that works, if it's just pure racism or if it's just kind of common sense about how we relate to people.
Yeah, because of statistics, Stephen. Statistically speaking, the person most likely to hurt my daughter and your daughter is someone that we know and someone that looks like us. A white man statistically is most dangerous to your daughter. So when you are looking at white men who are living like you are living, and you're like, oh, they don't scare me, but you're looking at a group of I think you said Latino men who, by the way, you also said have work trucks, so it seems like they have jobs, who just stay up all night and they seem to be single, so they're fucking, and maybe it might get a little rambunctious because they keep having to throw out the mattresses, so maybe they got to put down a towel or something. I don't know, but statistically speaking, the people most dangerous to your daughter, you're not afraid of. That's how I know it's racism, Stephen, because you're talking about common sense and you're talking about feelings, and you are projecting something onto these people that, statistically speaking, your priest, your family members, your friends are more likely to hurt your daughter. That's why I say it's racism, because you're not looking at the data to make your decision. You're looking at your feelings and what scares you. And so far, what you've told me is that there's a bunch of people that stay up late, that seem to have jobs, and they have tattoos. And what you haven't done is told me any of the harm that these people have caused in your neighborhood outside of people's thinking that they are harmful. You haven't given me one example of the harm that they're creating. So it sounds racist.
The harm that they're creating?
Yeah.
I mean, for one, you're talking about people who don't know anything about the way that the community works. I mean, they litter and they throw out trash. They don't even know like what fucking trash day is around here. I mean, it's crazy. People who come into these neighborhoods,
they litter.
And, yeah, no, seriously, they do. They come into these neighborhoods. They don't know the way that the neighborhood works. They don't even know that, like, for example, if you do live in an HOA, like what HOA rules even are. And then communities actually decay. Housing values. Stephen? Housing value. No, people don't bother to read. When just like moving in with their buddy.
Can your neighbors not read?
I know that this is fun for you, but
it's not fun for me.
I actually want to try to like finish a point.
You can't generally say these people can't read.
Hold on. I think we need to be mindful that, anecdotally, it sits a certain way for you, Stephen, right? But I think, somebody could easily clap back to that and say, well, pick a different neighborhood, right? Or pick one with an HOA, or I would even fire back and say, we have privacy laws. Like if everybody was leaning in to see what somebody's doing in their backyard or in their home, things of that nature, I would say like that actually, because you were pretty stringent about the process and the legalities of America. It's almost like a constitutionalist, right? And that would be that your very thought here would actually go against what you were kind of preaching to earlier, right? Because we have these privacy laws built in place, and what happens you could have 100 people living in your home if it's your home, right? So I don't know if it's necessarily helpful to the cause in terms of your argument. And because it's anecdotal, I don't know if I want to continue down that path necessarily.
That's fair. It's fine if you don't want to continue down the path. I feel quite confident that people who are watching this know that this is a shared experience. And RTP can try to make this sound like it's gonzo and harebrained all he wants, but this is something that people are actually going through all across this country, and it's why they're voting. It's why they're voting the way that they are. And
they're racist and they're poorly informed.
I would like to see
and they're being lied to
decline
by their politicians. And you guys lie to them. You scare them. Republicans just wake up every day in fear because that's all you guys know. You are just preaching fear, and you're putting that fear onto immigrants, and then you're treating immigrants inhumanely, and you're justifying it. Your only justification so far, Stephen, is littering.
Oh, that was my only justification in this.
I asked you what they do to hurt.
22 minutes.
For your neighbors, I asked what harm have they caused, and you said littering and apparently having too many trucks.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty concrete harm when you live in a neighborhood with people. It can actually really impact your quality of life. It changes.
I don't know how you'll recover from littering.
Good luck. I know that you think this is a joke, but when you're talking about people's real lives and their communities and homes that they invest in, communities where they have sort of a stake in actually how things are going, it does play a really big role. The quality of the neighbors that we'll have in the future, the fact of like whether or not my daughter, and again, like my Venezuelan neighbors' daughters feel safe going outside. These things are important. And they don't go outside, by the way, because they don't feel safe here. So they go elsewhere.
But there's no evidence that they're unsafe, Stephen.
But you know what?
Other than you, and then these people have tattoos.
I'm gonna go back here because I know it's like the facts don't care about your feelings thing. But a lot of times in politics, feelings don't care about facts, and the feelings issue here is important, and it is how our politics has gotten to the point where it is. overly polarized. I would also agree that nativism is rising in this country in a way that you and I both dislike. I don't like the tone of our politics. I don't like where Republican politics on immigration has gone. This is not what I got into politics for. But the only way that I think that we can roll this back and to make things better is we have to go through a period of stringent law enforcement to make people believe that this is a real system of rules and laws and accountability. And then if we actually accomplish that, and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be painful for individuals. I talked about that in my opening statement as well. It's not a pleasant process to be deported for a lot of these people, but it is in the best interests of the country.
Based on what, Stephen? Your feelings? This whole thing is that you and a bunch of other Republicans feel like this is the right thing to do. Statistically, economically, you don't have an argument economically. You don't have an argument even when it comes to the rule of law, because your party consistently ignores the rule of law. It is fascinating to watch a party led by Donald Trump lecture people about whether or not misdemeanors are a reason why somebody could get in trouble. You guys, like, your party won't even admit that Donald Trump was held liable for sexually assaulting somebody because it's a civil case. These are civil matters. These are not criminal matters that people are being deported for. They're civil matters, and we're an hour in now, and you're still just telling me that there are other people like you who see people with face tattoos and go, ah! And so they don't feel safe in their neighborhood. This is why people, like, if you look at Democrats have never been more ashamed of their country than they are right now. And it's because we are treating people horrifically based strictly, it appears, on their appearance. That's what I think the problem is. I mean, what's different about what's different about when we rounded Japanese people and put them in internment camps? Was that the right thing to do? There was a real.
Is that a serious question?
That's a very serious question.
Well, didn't the Supreme Court
that seemed to pose a
overrule
much
that
bigger
anyways?
threat than what we're seeing now. We were actually at war then, and it was still wrong. Or do you agree that we should have done internment camps?
I can't believe you're asking me this. No, I don't support internment camps of the Japanese.
Well, we're doing internment camps for these folks. What's the difference?
I don't think
Australia had an
illegal.
island off the East Coast for housing their illegal immigrants up until just a couple of years ago. They did.
I don't live in Australia, bud. You want to answer this question?
No, it's just like these are Western, like, liberal democracies, and you act like we're the only people who detain and deport
this
people.
is just the only country I get to vote in. So you're running against, Stephen. Every time I ask you a question that you don't want to answer, you do some like little whataboutism, or you're like, what about Australia? I want to know, what's the difference between the internment camps that we put Japanese people in and these internment camps now? What's the difference?
The internment camps of the Japanese, we all know, were instituted because there was generally a belief that if you were Japanese, you were funneling information back to the homeland that you were spying for or cooperating with a foreign power during war.
And was that true?
Well, of course not. And these are detainment facilities for illegal migrants who are going to be waiting for flights, I hope, back to their home countries or third-party countries. If we get, again, and I want to say this very clearly, like, if we get down a year, 2 years down the road, and these people are still sitting in these facilities, I'll come here and just say, like, yeah, I was fucking wrong. This is atrocious. We're just holding these people. There's talk about sending people to Guantanamo Bay, which, if you know anything about Guantanamo Bay, that's just where you go and you just sit and languish for the rest of your life until the next time we close it. If that happens, I'm against it. That's bad. Nobody wants that. But if these people are being staged for flights back to their countries of origin, I'm for it. But until that doesn't happen, I think you're just dealing in pretty harebrained theories comparing this to Japanese internment camps. Everybody knows that that's not true.
You're aware that, of course, there are people that have been held in ICE detention camps for years already, right? You're aware of that?
I am.
Okay, and you're aware that U.S. citizens have been held in ICE detention for up to 50 days.
Yeah, there were
right?
about 75 American citizens in 2022 who were picked up in different ICE raids, and then they were detained for a long period of time. I hope they win their lawsuits.
Yeah, me too. But you just said that if people wound up being held for years, then you would come on this stream and you would denounce it. Well, it's been years, so I think it's time to denounce it, Stephen.
I mean, I denounce that. I think it's bad, but that doesn't give us carte blanche.
But we should just keep doing it?
That doesn't give us carte blanche to not have an illegal immigration enforcement system where we capture, detain, and deport people, which we both know is a thing that's happening. When people languish in the system, I'm against it. One of the things that I think is pretty undeniable about, we don't need to talk about the big, beautiful bill, but the amount of money that is being pumped into DHS and ICE. I mean, ICE is now going to be, and I think this is a little bit weird, but they're now going to be like the most well-funded law enforcement agency in the country.
Shout out big government.
They're going to be getting more than $100 billion through 2029. DHS is going to be getting even more for enforcement on these issues. But I would like to point us back to the kids in cages stuff again from 2021, 2022, and this continued to occur. In the Biden administration, there was a lot of these images of people in like the foil blankets and stuff, and just the really horrible conditions on the border. I think you might know the pictures I'm talking about, where everybody in those really packed cages wearing tinfoil blankets. This is also like a funding issue. We're going to actually have to put money into this operation if Americans want it to happen. Otherwise, it's a humanitarian tragedy.
Stephen, those people weren't ripped from their job sites, from their homes, from courts. Those were people that were detained at the border. There's a massive difference between ripping people from their families who are here working, who have committed no crime. Some of them have been here for decades, have never committed a crime. They're paying into our system. And we literally, in some cases, ripping them out of the arms of their family to detain them. I appreciate that you want to whataboutism your way out of this one too. But you know what Obama didn't do? You know what Trump didn't do the first time? You know what Biden didn't do? They didn't flood these neighborhoods, break into people's houses. They didn't smash windows, throw in flashbangs.
I was just trying to have a level-headed exchange about the necessity of
and I think that's a silly. It's a silly way for you to once again. It's a silly way for you to once again avoid answering any of this. This is
you hear that, everybody? I've never answered any question. He just keeps doing this routine. No, you actually have to put funding into these different programs, and immigration enforcement, because it has become this divisive third rail issue in Congress where nobody ever wants to do anything. One of the probably more positive things that did happen in this budget bill, which again was a monstrosity of an omnibus bill, was to put money where the party's mouth is on this issue. They're actually going to have to be able to fund detainment, housing, and deportation. It's going to require a huge commitment. We've never really
for no benefit.
Benefit. And we've never really done that before. And I think that lack of funding has led to a lot of the things that you're talking about. And again, anybody who's detained who's not supposed to be, I hope they win their lawsuit. That's it.
Yeah, look, I appreciate that. It doesn't change any of this. Is that the reason that we're detaining and rounding up people with no criminal history is because, frankly, I'm like Stephen Miller's running this. Somebody's gonna tell me Stephen Miller's not like just an avowed racist, that he's not a white nationalist. He was best friends with Richard Spencer. He's been since college. He's been spouting white nationalist ideas publicly on the radio. It's who he is, and he's pushing this. And you're going to tell me this isn't about white nationalism. The problem that I think we have more than anything is that Americans, specifically Americans that look like you and I, who don't really have real problems, but we pretend that we do, we've somehow become afraid of immigrants. And so now folks like you are willing to shut your eyes and watch people be treated like second-class citizens and be thrown in prison, some of them thrown in life sentences in countries that they've never even been before, all because you think they're a little bit icky. They look a little bit different to you. And you think that this is going to fix the country? Name me one country who has done
lives on the fringes of society.
One country
has their payroll taxes
Stephen, what are you doing
from every check
what are you
that
doing,
they're doing
Stephen?
on a farm. They come here,
let me ask
they
the
do
question,
cheap labor, and then
Stephen,
people say, oh, they're
please.
contributing to our GDP.
Stephen, let me ask the question, please.
And they're funding our Social Security, but
You're
we
falling
don't want to
apart,
have
bud.
them. We don't want to have them documented. Those are second-class citizens.
You ready for the question now,
A person
Stephen?
who doesn't actually belong in the country, who is an illegal immigrant, who's sitting in a detainment facility to go home, is not a second-class citizen. They're nothing at all. They're a citizen of someone else's country, and they're going home.
They are nothing at all.
They are.
I think that encapsulates. Steve, just give me an example in history when mass deportation was a good thing.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't
Weird,
know.
huh? Seems like all the ones we know about turned out
you're doing
to be
like
really
some
fucking
you're doing some like
horrific, huh?
little Google research to like arm yourself while we're chatting. I don't know. I don't have a good example off the top of my head of like a mass deportation campaign that was positive.
Could you think of some that were bad?
I think here that we are dealing again in a
Could you think of some that, Stephen, if we're going to have a discussion, at some point, you've got to respond to the things I'm saying instead of just whatever the fuck you want.
At some point.
All right.
At some point.
Here's what we're going to do, because I feel like this is not going anywhere positive, right? I don't think we're making any headway in the conversation. And so what I'd like to do, if gentlemen, if you'll oblige me, if you're agreeable, I'd like to move into closing statements, then do read and respond to super chats. And I think that if we open the panel up, we might get somewhere a little further with the conversation to allow a little more room for other thought processes, because Stephen is, you're kind of going in one direction, RTP is going in another, but we're not really getting any clarification or conclusion per se between the two directions that you're going in, right? We're not coming together on those. So maybe if we can bring in some other folks, we can actually get through different points, or maybe somebody can translate and bring that together. Would that be okay with the both of you?
Yeah, sure. Have at it.
Okay. All right. So Stephen, if you'd like to kick off with your closing statement, please.
Yeah, closing statement. I am concerned about the heart and direction of this country. I feel like it is getting embittered. It is getting ugly. I think something that Jay and I both agree on is that there is a rise in nativist sentiment that is capturing politics in this country. There is distrust amongst people and their neighbors. There's distrust against people and their political institutions. I worry that it's all going to fall apart. I really do. I think that immigration as an issue is going to be the next issue that breaks apart this country into some kind of meaningful conflict. I think that it's something that is not in the realm of fiction. I think immigration is the thing that will do that. It might be in the realm of brass tacks, where it's just really, combat between states over, again, representation in Congress and who has the most power when they go to Washington, D.C., and who is lining their populations with illegal immigrants to increase their political power. And then I just also believe that it's going to break down because of a lack of good faith and goodwill in our communities at home. I think we actually have to address it. Deportation is something that we just don't do enough of. We don't fund it well enough, and we don't take it seriously. I think that this is the best thing for the country to get back on the right track. And I think that if we actually go through a period of pretty stringent law enforcement and look, I think just like really in some cases, just going hard on this issue of deportations and immigration, we will get back to a point where the American public feels comfortable again and supportive of immigration, which we need. We have talked a little bit about the Social Security bomb that's going to be a big problem for this country, retirement, different entitlements programs. The money does not come from nowhere. And again, like white folks aren't having enough kids to actually keep the whole thing afloat. It's going to be a big problem. So immigrants are a huge part of our future. And we actually have to get the political will in this country back in a place where we can do that. And that's going to require a little bit of dad action in Washington, Trump coming and being law and order. And then we can get back to being nice and namby-pamby about it again. That's my closer.
Thank you, Stephen. And RTP to you.
We've done this for an hour and a half, and I thought I was pretty careful about cultivating an opening statement where I thought we were going to be able to talk about statistics and data. And I think that Republicans in general, and Stephen in this discussion, they don't want to talk about those numbers. They want to talk a lot about their feelings. It was, I feel. He said, I worry that this will all fall apart. And I believe that that's what Republicans think. And they think that because they are fed a steady diet of lies by white nationalists parading as patriots, trying to convince them that what is the problem in this country is immigrants and not vulture capitalists, not wealth inequality, not a lack of access to healthcare, not a lack of access to good paying jobs, not a lack of access to quality food. not a lack of access to a quality education. It is indeed the brown people. It's always the brown people. Every great democracy or every great country who has falls this exact same way. They scapegoat people. In Germany, it was the Jews. In the United States, it's going to be brown immigrants. If you want to look at the numbers, though, a comprehensive analysis by the American Immigration Council estimates that deporting 13.3 million undocumented immigrants in a single large-scale operation would cost at least $315 billion, but better estimates are probably around $800 billion. And on top of that $800 billion, we are going to lose a net positive of $50 billion that comes into our economy. And all of this could be avoided if we just granted amnesty to those who are here, who are working hard, who are raising families, who have no criminal history, and they could keep working where they're at, and they could contribute to society. Most studies, almost every studies, found that illegal immigration has almost no effect on the average wages of American, native-born American workers. Some research even shows that there is a positive effect. There is almost no danger posed to you by immigrants as a collective, although sometimes an immigrant can cause you a problem. The result of all of this, if Donald Trump is successful, is that we will have the least effective, most expensive, and most hate-filled deportation in the history of this country. Obama deported far more people than Trump, and he did it without riots in the streets. Biden deported more people than Trump, and he did it without riots in the street. Trump 1.0 was able to deport more people without riots in the street. It's the cruelty. And the result will be that a bunch of white nationalists will be happy that they were able to convince generic Republicans that the great replacement theory is real, and they will be happier, but our country will be poorer, and it will be more white, and we will destroy our credibility amongst any Latino country, forcing us to go find labor somewhere else that we desperately need, and then try and convince those people, hey, this time though, in America, we're going to be cool this time. This time we're going to be cool. Don't look at the past. That's it.
Fair enough. Thank you, RTP. And I am dropping the open panel link in chat for anyone who, especially all you crap talkers out in the chat there. I see you. The panel is officially open backstage. Please feel free to hop back there while we go through the super chats. For the chats, I'm going to go ahead and only read 10 and up for now, just for purposes of time, but I will get through the $5 super chats a little later throughout open panel. So bear with me. I will read them. We will have some fun with them. Gentlemen, if you want to respond to the super chat, you're more than welcome to. I like it short and sweet, concise, and to the point. For anyone who would like to, if either of you would like to respond to them. Otherwise, if nobody talks, I will just move on. A Tard Wrangler with the Big 20 says, why should we not strongly encourage motherhood? Importing people from nations that are also declining in population is only delaying the inevitable. We need to strengthen the family unit, even if it seems, I'll say it for me. I can never say these words.
Even if it seems tyrannical.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I agree in spirit. I love the idea. It speaks to me, but there's just no way to do this. You can't make people procreate, have more babies. I don't even believe in this whole idea about, tax credits for people having more kids. I just don't believe that family planning decisions happen on the basis of the tax code. I think that family planning might occur much more on the basis of livability. I think student debt is a huge driver, actually, of why people delay having families, because there's just sort of this myth out there in family formation that you have to be financially well off before you start a family. I think that is actually completely untrue, but you're not going to be able to fix that at the governmental level. That's going to happen down at the bottom of society. And I think that's just not something that's going to work, but I'm with you in spirit.
Yep. Anything from you, RTP?
Yeah, look, I think we should stop attacking women's bodily autonomy. Maybe we shouldn't have questions like it happened in Florida last week, where we have a sitting member of Congress who couldn't get an abortion, almost lost her life because of confusion with abortion policy. Maybe we should do something about wealth inequality. Maybe we should do something about maternity leave. Maybe we should do something about paid leave. Maybe we should do something about wages. Maybe we should do something about universal health care. There's a million things we could do to encourage mothers to have more children, but deporting brown people doesn't do a goddamn thing to facilitate that.
And Tard Wrangler follows up with a correction to say, excuse me, declining birth rates, not populations. Thank you for the clarification. Midnight in Exile with the Big Ten says, this Mo just wants as many in as it takes for him to get social approval. He don't give a fuck about my, not his, working class of this country. F him, and Sara is a Vulcan.
Am I the Mo? Is that me? Am I Mo? The Mo?
I'm not sure what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm not. I kind of had a hard time understanding which way that was going as well. No thoughts. That's okay too.
Send me $10, and then we'll figure it out.
I think he's talking about me, and I think it's the same claim Stephen leveled at me. And it's when you attack what I care about, it means that you don't have an answer for the fact that, statistically speaking, there wasn't a single argument I laid out tonight that was even attempted to be argued. And we'll see that in the chat. Continue. You guys want to talk about my personal feelings? You can attack the data. I don't have personal feelings about this. I want the right thing for this country, and I want to do the right thing according to the numbers. And I don't think we're doing that.
Yeah. May I respond to that just real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just one of the things that I think is really important to concede here is that, you wanted to have a conversation about data and the numbers and a lot of the concrete consequences of stuff like this. I don't entirely disagree with a lot of that. I think there are going to be really concrete consequences to a lot of the things that you're talking about. There are actual dollars and cents put into the economy, into our country, into our entitlement programs by illegal immigrants. I just don't think that we should be in this situation. I think we actually have to find a way to rip this Band-Aid off and figure out what our country is actually made of without a two-tiered society of people living in the shadows and people who live legally. I just don't think it's good for us. So I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm going, we might need to damn the torpedoes here and figure out what's really going on. And there might be some real hurt from that. So,
but again, you haven't even been able to show me what the problem is outside of that people think. I just
try to talk to you like a normal person over and over and over again, and you don't want to do that, but that's fine. Keep doing you.
No, I'm saying, look, I'm just saying that you haven't shown me a problem. It's just that you say that people don't like it, and that seems to be the problem. I think people not liking something.
I think that's a big problem in a free country of free people who are supposed to govern themselves, and where you call it a democracy. I think that actually does matter a whole lot.
I wonder if maybe the likability, Stephen, might come down to other factors, and maybe you can peel through that throughout because I feel like that's probably going to be a big piece of the commentary coming from the panel.
The likability,
why the likability factor is important, because I'm sure you could derive from that all of these other issues of why people would actually not like that, right? Aside from tattoos and 25-year-old dudes in a house next door, yeah. I think there are, something you could say, maybe if there's 20 people living in one house, and maybe only one of them is actually a legal citizen paying taxes and they're accounted for, and so on and so forth. I would go down the route of, what about the other 20 people not paying taxes towards that school system? And because the school system failing was brought up as in context, maybe you could derive or maybe deep dive a little further into why that likability is a bigger issue based on root-based factors. Maybe that's something we can get into on the panel. I think you can find it. I think it's there. I think we just should root base it. Thunderstorm with the Big Ten says, why don't we pay these people to live in their own homelands? The trillions spent on giving them us, say it for me.
Homogeneity.
Thank you. Creating safety and prosperity. Any thoughts?
No.
Yeah, statistically speaking, people who immigrate here are less likely to commit crimes, specifically violent crimes. So if we want more safety and prosperity, my recommendation is that we bring in more immigrants because they commit crimes at lower rates. Again, this is just like, it feels a lot like brown people bad. There's no data to support this.
Yeah, I mean, again, and I don't dispute that data point at all. It's factual. And I think when you can just go through the illegal versus legal immigration process in this country and rebuild trust that the legal process is credible and that the people who are going through the process have been vetted, that they belong here, I think you'll get to a point where people do understand this. I believe that in my own personal experience. People who come to this country, again, risking life and limb to be here, going through the process, they're hardworking, entrepreneurial. They try to stay as clean as possible. They don't have that American privilege that, just taints so many people who have been here for the longest time. That think they can just do whatever they want and never put anything back into the system. I think those people do contribute a lot. But the problem is that we don't have any sense of trust across our society that the person next door is actually one of those vetted individuals. We need to restore that somehow.
All right. Tard Wrangler, again with a big 20, says illegals are a net drain. They receive many, many benefits and they don't pay into the system because they are on government work programs. And they send a lot of this money back to their homes to pay off cartels' debts.
I mean, I think they send a lot of money back home. I don't know about cartel debts, but
I think this is a good example of people just following their feelings and repeating dumb shit that dumb shit Republicans say all the time. I've given these numbers like 15 times on this. So Wrangler, one more time, they are a net positive, $50 billion net positive. When you take the expenses that we spend on illegal immigrants and we take the money that they put into our economy, it is a net benefit. This is just what people say to dumb people to get them to vote for Republicans. Be scared of immigrants, please. And then they just lie to you about this shit and you show up and you say this shit. But I appreciate you being here.
Fair enough.
We appreciate it too.
Jesterol with a big 10 says, when I was working in Germany illegally after 2 years, they caught me and deported me back to the U.S. Were they wrong to do that? I think it's a hypothetical, but
I don't care. But you got to shut the fuck up forever about illegal immigration because that was you. You're out there. You don't get an opinion on this. You're a lawbreaker. You shut the fuck up. I don't know what Germany's laws are. I don't have a problem with deporting people here. I just want to do the thing that seems the smartest. Maybe they didn't feel like you were a net benefit to their society, and they sent you back here.
No, yeah, obviously, kick them out.
Gavin Freenon with a big 10, granting his argument about illegals bringing in money, companies actively pay them lower wages while legal Americans are suffering unemployment. This is actively an issue in Chicago where I work.
I think Americans are both suffering unemployment, but they are also rolling through unemployment voluntarily and living off the entitlement system just as much as some of the people that folks in this chat would accuse of using it as well. Folks in this country are dealing with a whole wealth of issues, including drug addiction and just over dependence on things like different parts of welfare. So yes, there is an unemployment issue. There are some jobs in which people get priced out of the market by imported labor working for pennies on the dollar. But, I just kind of believe that if you're missing a job, you haven't looked hard enough and you need to get out there and make yourself useful.
I'd give you a hug for that one, Stephen. This would be a hug moment. He doesn't even want look at him. He doesn't even want it. Look, I covered this before, but you can go look at Brookings Institute. You can look at 11/6/727 House document, ppic.org. The research shows that generally speaking, when it comes to wages, illegal immigration has positive wealth gains for American citizens, anywhere from 0.1 to 0.6%. It mostly has no effect, though. I mean, it's very, very marginal, But again, this is a thing that Republicans lie to you about to get you to be afraid of immigrants so they can deport immigrants because and it's crazy that this will get a bad response, but like all of you guys, a lot of people in this chat are listening to open white nationalists who have been warning us repeatedly about a replacement and that people were coming to replace you. People like Charlie Kirk, people like Nick Fuentes, people like Tim Pool, who repeat this day in and day out. They are trying to scare you. They want just white people here. They want Christian white people here in this country. So they lie to you over and over again. And all it really takes, like everybody that's here, you can all do this. If you're watching this, I know that you have the internet. Google it. Use Chat GBT. Use Grok. Use Perplexity. I don't care what it is. Just ask, do illegal immigrants, are they a net positive or a net negative economically? And you'll all get the same answer. And unfortunately, where that leaves a lot of you is you'll say, nah, I don't trust the internet. I trust my feelings instead.
Fair enough. I've got 4 more, and then we'll bring on the panel and have some more fun. Tard Wrangler again with the Big Ten. Where was the due process when they came into my country and overstayed their visa? Fuck these people. Get them out of my country. A family deported together stays together. Jesus Lord.
I agree. No family, no family separation. Keep them together. Goodbye.
Yeah, due process happens once you're accused of a crime, not before you're accused of a crime, which is why Wrangler, when you ran into a stop sign with your car because you couldn't figure out the brakes and the gas, you weren't charged with that before you did it. So it's a remarkably dumb question to say, like, why did they do due process before we charged them? The due process comes when you're charged with the crime. That's where the due process was.
Okay. Gavin with the Big Ten says, do people really think only white people are concerned or experiencing this in their neighborhoods? Your party thinks dudes can give birth, but the right lies all the time.
Yeah, one of the biggest developments in the polling on support for immigration and deportations, of course, comes from shifts in the Black community over the past 15 to 20 years. This is something that Democrats really struggle to talk about. Is how the people in their coalition of the ascendant and different minority groups, they don't all like have a common cause like they thought they were. And there is actually a lot of infighting. There's a lot of resentment, particularly in big cities and blue states about who is living on the system and who's getting the most attention from Democratic politicians. If you're a Black voter in Chicago, you're probably more accustomed to the city catering to some of your interests than you are to them catering to illegals who were just shipped in over the past 4 years. And this is actually like a real issue. This also breaks down into not being able to understand little things like that Guatemalans might hate Mexicans or El Salvadorians don't like the Venezuelans. There's just a lot of infighting between these groups, and there are major concerns between all of them about illegals packing into their neighborhood when they're from countries that they don't like. And again, this never gets talked about in the mainstream media at all when it regards immigration, but it's very real.
Yeah, Stephen just during that answer, Stephen did the same thing he did from the beginning. I don't know how many more times we have to correct this, and this is the problem with the right, is you guys just always fucking lie. There were not a bunch of illegals shipped in over the last 4 years. Stephen, once again, look in the camera. Asylum is a legal process, Stephen. Those are legal immigrants, Stephen.
Nobody believes what you're saying. You can just keep saying it over and over again. They were asylum seekers.
Stephen, it was my turn. I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you.
It is RTP's turn.
You have to use these inflammatory language. And to answer your question, do I really think only white people are concerned or experiencing this in their neighborhoods? No. I'm wondering what the fuck you're experiencing, though, because what Stephen told me is somebody littered and they had too many cars. And what they told me in Springfield is they were eating the pets. And every time I ask you, what are you experiencing? It seems to be that there's more brown people. And secondly, about dudes giving birth, I don't know why you guys are obsessed with trans people. It's sick. It's weird. Like nobody in my party ever gets together and talks about trans people. But you guys we're having an immigration debate and you're like, oh, trans people. Just come already. It's fine. Let it out. Look at your search history. Just come already. But let us get back to immigration, please, where we can lie about why you guys are afraid of brown people.
Oh, my dear Lord. Thunderstorm with Big Ten just to ask the question, why don't you have a doorknob, RTP?
This is actually these are sliding
closet.
doors, so they
Yeah.
just have like the hole. They're sliding doors.
Couldn't afford a doorknob.
And a last one, and
It's a joke. Just laugh. God damn it.
It's all right.
he spent more money on the mustache.
That's right.
One more, and then we'll open up the panel and hopefully have some fun. Thunderstorm with the Big Ten. I'm sorry. Worst Viking ever says, RTP, where was this passion and outrage when 300,000 brown children went missing under Biden-Harris? Hope your pup gets well soon. Thank you.
The outrage when 300,000 brown people went missing under Biden and Harris, who also were missing under Trump, who also were missing under Obama. This is, again, a fundamental misunderstanding. Now, you don't give a fuck about these children at all because you want to deport them anyways. But if we want to clear this up, the 3,000 missing people, they were handed off. Right? They were handed off to a caretaker. And what this 300,000 number is just people not checking in. They're just supposed to check in. And when they don't check in, they say that they're lost. There's no evidence that these people are missing. There's no evidence that these people are being harmed. It's really hard to keep track of people. And that's what that number was. So the outrage was we should fix our system. But where was your outrage during the Trump administration when almost that exact number occurred? Oh, you didn't know about it. Because they don't ever tell you the truth. They lie to you so that you can justify why you want to deport brown people. I said it at the beginning. I'll say it again. Everything you guys believe about immigration is a fucking lie. Everything. I can't even get Steven to figure out the difference between legal and illegal immigration. After 2 hours, we're still calling legal immigrants illegal immigrants. Why?
They're all asylum seekers, everybody. Remember.
They are asylum seekers. That doesn't
They shouted
mean we're granted
asylum.
asylum.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they
Moving
did,
on.
Stephen. It's a legal process.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead. I've got a full panel sitting backstage, and I think I've got one for each of you back there. Actually, probably 5 for each of you to take on.
Orgy.
It's going to be fun. Stephen, can you stick around a little longer?
Yeah, I can do a little.
You got this. I believe in you. I think it'll be more fun for you. Now that I understand your style of banter, I think it's going to be a blast. All right, let's go. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'll just say gentlemen because there's all boys on here, gentlemen. Okay, most of you know the rules of this house. Open panel means I am in charge. And when I tell you to shut up, you zip it. And if you don't, the chat can and will boot you. The only 2 people that cannot be booted from this stream this evening at all with any sort of donos, I don't care how much you send, unless it's $1 million, then we'll talk. Is Stephen and RTP, of course. They are the guest panelists of the evening. The rest of you are just volunteer minions who are here because you want to be. All right. So chat, you can choose to boot anyone off the screen. You know the drill. $5 starting. It gets them definitely 5 minutes in the back. And I've got 2 more people sitting backstage ready to come up as well, so they can be replaced. And I'm sure the panel will be shaken up some more throughout the evening. Also, the gauntlet is now open. I will be dropping the link in the chat. We will be shutting down Tomato here within the next 15 minutes. Ryan, you already got a boot.
Can I say one thing before?
One thing
Ryan,
before.
sorry,
Go
bud.
ahead. It happens.
Okay, so I mean, like Stephen, I think admitted multiple times throughout the debate, and especially towards the end, that this is going to harm the country as like a net that will be a net harm. He seems to just kind of have been justifying it. saying over and over that that people just want it, which is frankly debatable. I don't think most Americans do support deporting undocumented people who aren't committing crimes, who are showing up to court, and who are working and contributing to society. Even Trump originally claimed he was only targeting violent criminals, but that's not what's happening. We're deporting peaceful people, some to foreign prisons and even war zones. So I'll see you all in 5 minutes.
So may I go first, Sarah?
That's because
yes. Who's got the echo? Somebody's got the echo.
Not me.
Oh, all right. And then also Wick, you got a boot as well.
No, I didn't. Keep looking at the super
Oh,
chats.
my apologies. It just
You're
came through on
okay.
my end. You're okay. Wick stays, and you've got a $15 credit. All right. If anybody wanted
Wickers
to
come through.
respond
Okay, that's all I'm saying. Anyway.
to what Ryan said, you're more than welcome to go.
Yeah, I want to respond to that. First off, when did you this new narrative that Trump would only wanted to go after people who were here that were committing crimes? That was never the case. When he said mass deportations, that meant if you're here legally, you could get deported. I don't know why. When did that change? That you guys say, "Oh, he's not doing what he said he was going to do." He said if you were here legally, you were going to get deported.
So if I may come in real quickly, I'm sorry, but I guess as the only Latin American ex-migrant who returned home and somebody who works with migration for the past 25 years. First, thank you, Sarah, for having me. Second, what a subpar.
Hold on. Can you respond to what I just said first?
Yeah, we don't want to keep opening up new doors.
Thanks.
So it is appalling to see that.
No. You're still doing it. He didn't respond to what I said. Let him respond first, and then you can go.
All right, please respond, and I'll go afterwards.
Thanks.
Michael, who are you directing that to, by the way?
To RTP.
What's up, Tex? How are you, my friend? I'm here because of Michael. Michael's the one that reached out to you, right, Sarah?
Yeah.
Was it my?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, Trump was very specific on the campaign trail that they were going to go after, that they were going to target the criminals and those who were here doing violent crime.
Did he hold on? Did he say he's going to stop? Okay, go ahead.
In 70%, like if we look at LA and you look at the numbers, like over 70% are not criminals at all. So the allegation is that this thing that he said they were going to do was what the focus was going to be. I don't think that's true. You don't find violent criminals at work. You don't find violent criminals at their work or at court. I think the problem that we have is ICE is full of bitches and they don't want to get in any real trouble. So they don't go to dangerous neighborhoods and do dangerous things. They show up and go after people who aren't going to fight back, and they do it with masks because they're all a bunch of bitches.
Well, there's an actual reason for this, is because Stephen Miller directed them to find easier targets. They specifically stopped by design going after violent criminals because that took too many man hours. It put them at too much risk. They weren't hitting their numbers, and so it was just easier to go after the people where they knew where they were going to be. They knew the people who would show up to their court dates.
Well, that's the thing. Who cares?
If I may finish, please. And they knew this, right? And so by design, they have deprioritized, and this is Stephen Miller has said this is their policy, stated policy, is by design, they're going to not go after the violent criminals, and they're going to instead focus and prioritize the nonviolent.
Can we accept that?
Hold on. Wick, your mic is fishbowling.
What do you mean fishbowl?
Can we accept?
It sounds like you're in a fishbowl.
Oh, let me see if I can fix that. But
It,
do
like, went out
you
for
hear
a
my
second.
point at least, right?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Can we agree that the rhetoric about criminals and illegality is just a gaslighting that is senseless in every sense of the word? Because let me put this forward out here. The debate was completely subpar in many ways. RTP, you were better-ish. You still have a lot to learn in regards to the subject, but Stephen, I'm going to go here with 3 simple questions.
Okay.
Straightforward, shoot them out. 1, in the last 25 years, can you concisely say what are the major factors that have contributed to displacement of people, therefore the irregular undocumented migration towards the United States? Second, you talked about Venezuelan. I am Tico, I am Venezuelan.
Cool.
Can you tell me in the last 25 years how many people have exodus out of Venezuela and how many have chosen United States and where the majority of Venezuelans actually migrate to. And third, in the last 4 administrations, that's George Bush.
You're assuming that I have a good memory.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong.
It's all right.
Hold on.
We'll
I
see
hadn't
how we do
finished.
here.
Okay, don't get me wrong. These are rhetorical questions. I'm testing your knowledge. If you're talking about this subject, you should be able to answer those questions like this.
No, you shouldn't.
Oh yeah, because that's what goes on.
I can answer them
all
like
the time.
this.
Yes.
I can answer them like this.
I think it's great.
The last question. Hold on. The last question.
Hey, could I respond to the two?
Yeah, but you interrupted me before I finished. So let me finish with this.
And you interrupted me, so I guess you're
let's
even.
run through one line at a time. Stephen, if you want to go ahead and
yeah,
I have one more.
I know you got one more. I'm just trying
okay,
to I'm trying to discourse with you in a calm and respectful manner. So the first two questions, I don't come on here pretending that I know everything. I just got invited to come on here and chat, and here I am sharing my opinions. The first question was about what's driving immigration and migration from the Southern Hemisphere. I think depending on who you talk to, you get one of two answers. There would be political instability, unrest, and then you've got people who would attribute that to climate issues. So a bunch of different factors creating unrest south of the border, driving people up. And then some people will say that it has a lot to do with U.S. meddling south of the border in Latin America and South America, and that it's a self-imposed thing that we've done to ourselves and blah, blah, blah. We're just getting what we deserve. I'm sure that you have a concrete answer, and I'm open to hearing it.
Yes.
The second one, how many people have left Venezuela? I don't know. You have the number?
Yes. So first question, which was rhetorical. First, the driving force towards irregular, undocumented migration is related directly and caused by the war on drugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's directly done by that.
Huge factor. Yeah.
The second and third factors have to do and are related to the social, political, and economic instabilities, not only through climate change, but through the issues that are happening, for example, in the regime of Ortega, regime of Maduro, Chavez, etc.
Yep.
And to answer the second question, 6 to 8 million Venezuelans of my people have exodus out of Venezuela in the last 25 years, more concentrated within the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that, 85% have chosen countries near Latin America. That means Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, Costa Rica, Mexico, so on. Out of that, the remaining 15% have about 5% have chosen United States, and the remaining have chosen between Europe, mainly Spain, UK, Germany, etc., Africa, and Asia.
Okay.
So in the matters of the Venezuelans, the majority have not chosen United States because they consider that United States is not a country for them.
Okay.
So
Jay, can I hold on 1 second? I just want to ask Jay one question. Let's just hypothetically say that immigration, Trump's deportations were a net positive for the country. I know you said it's a net negative economically, but let's just hypothetically say it was a net positive. Every average American would have an extra $1,000 in their bank account by the end of the year. Would you be okay with deportations then?
I think you'd have a stronger. Make sure I'm not on mute. I think you'd have a stronger argument. I don't think I would be still supportive of the way that it's being done and the lack of humanity. But like, I'm not against deportations in general. I know that my policy of what I would want the immigration system to be wouldn't be that popular. I would have a hard time getting people to want the same thing that I want. But I would certainly be more okay with it if it made sense on any level. The problem is with this is I don't think it makes sense on any level except for people feel a certain way. And I think that's a silly way
RTP,
to term
quick question.
Sure.
What is the difference? What is the material difference between the so-called legal and illegal migration?
If they're doing it legally or not?
No. The material difference between illegal and legal is an economic one. Why? Because if you migrate legally, you are willingly moving to another country because you have a job opportunity, because you have family members over there, so many other factors.
Seeking
the illegality, seeking asylum, etc. the so-called illegality has to do with the factors that we already spoke. So the question is, in the last 4 administrations, Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden, why haven't either Republicans or Democrats attended the issues that have fueled and aggravated the displacement of people, then creating the conditions of undocumented irregular migrants towards the United States? Hell, we had Kamala Harris here. Do not come. I was there in Guatemala, for crying out loud. When she said that, I almost puked.
Always
because
with
it was
the anecdotals did so. Always with the anecdotals.
Well, I think the thing is, Jay doesn't.
I think
Let me just sum this up real quick.
Wait, don't
Real-
speak for me. Don't speak.
No, I'm not speaking for you.
Oh, okay.
But like, all right, for instance, because I've had this argument with you before. I've said Obama has deported more people than Trump on average per day. Biden has deported more people on average per day. And what you say is, well, it's because they do a cruelty. The way they're doing it is cruel. That, you know, the White House, they have make these mute little videos and clips. It's propaganda, basically. All right. But obviously they're doing that for a reason, because that's what they think that people want to see. They want to see people getting deported, right? So
And
what's the difference?
I have a problem with that.
But this was still happening regardless of whether they were filming it or not during Obama and Biden. Do you think they hold on, I'm not done. Do you think they were only going after criminals then?
Well, let me ask you a question. Tex, that's your wife there in that picture?
Yeah.
You like having sex with your wife?
Yeah, we have a baby on
Would
the
you
way.
like would you like me to put that up on the internet? Would you feel differently about that sex with your wife if I put it up on the internet?
Lord,
how do you know we haven't?
That's a fair point. I'm asking you the question. Would you feel differently?
If
Would I feel? I don't know.
It's the cruelty that's the point. Like, the cruelty of all of this is the point. That's the thing that gets Republicans dick hard. Like, that's why we're calling it alligator whatever. That's why they have them. Like, nobody's getting away from these detention centers. We don't need a fucking moat. Why do we have a moat? Why are we calling it alligator Alcatraz? Why are we just selling merch? Because it's the cruelty. That's
all right,
what
so you would be you would be fine if they hold on. You would be fine with it if they weren't glorifying it, is what you're saying.
I mean, I would not be okay with them go. I don't think that it makes any sense to go into workplaces, and I certainly don't think the one that makes me the most mad is the people that are going to court. They're clearly people who are trying to get their immigration status in order, and they're going to their court dates, and then they are being picked up at court. Why? Once again, I'll say it again. These ICE agents are a bunch of bitches, and they have a quota, and so they have to act like bitches and go to court for low-hanging fruit, and they are not going after the people that are causing any harm at all. They're just deporting people who are desperate to stay here and who are clearly law-abiding citizens who I would like to keep here.
All right. Well, do you think that might change? Do you think that might change?
Allow me.
This is a bipartisan problem. I'm sorry.
Just for logistic purposes only, I'm shutting the tomato side down. So if you're watching over on the tomato side, I did set up a raid. It should automatically raid you into the gauntlet. If not, I am going to drop the link in the live chat now. But start moving over. Tomato is shutting down.
So do you think? I know you're not.